Hello, everyone. Welcome to our June creator stream. We have a very exciting guest here today with us. This is Jay Jackson, the creator of the Eluran language. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Jay. I'm a Canadian woman living in South Korea who does language stuff definitely as a major hobby. I'm also a teacher, and I write for a textbook here, so
Awesome.
Things.
Yeah. So we've got some great questions in from our patrons, and I'm just gonna ask you some questions all about like how you created Eluran and how you got into this kind of stuff. To start out with, how did you get started in like creating languages?
To be honest, I've really been interested in languages forever.
Mm-hmm.
My parents say when I was like a baby, they used to listen to me on the baby monitor, and I'd just be repeating words that I'd heard during the day and trying to like get the pronunciation right. When I was a little bit older than that, I didn't know how to write, but I just really wanted to. So I would get some lined paper and I would just scribble on it, like so that it looked like writing. And I don't know, I was really interested in it. I eventually, as a teenager, I started developing my own alphabets. And some of them, you know, unfortunately complex, because I was just really interested in it, and really interested in you know, the way that alphabets can come together in different ways to give different impressions, whether they're, you know, sort of circular or very like angular and that kind of thing. So I think when I was a bit older, I started realizing this wasn't just a me thing, especially when I got access to the internet. I realized like, like there are other people out there who are interested in this kind of thing, because I can say definitely my family was not. And so that was really cool. And when I got access to the internet, you know, there's alphabets out there, real alphabets, there's, you know, made up alphabets and all that kind of stuff. But I would say probably my first moment when I realized, you know, how cool this kind of thing was, someone gave me The Hobbit, and on the outside of the title page, there was a bunch of runes. And I went, oh my God, this is incredible. Like you've never seen anyone as excited as I was. So I took an entire afternoon, and like, I'd never done this before. I just decided this is what I wanted to do. I deciphered all of the runes, and much to my disappointment, as soon as I opened the book, there was the alphabet on the first page. So yeah, I've always really been interested in them, in different languages. And, you know, as I grow older, it only gets sort of more detailed and more complex. So when I started playing D&D, and I realized, you know, there's a whole new world out here. It was really, really cool, really, really neat. And I think when Rico, the owner of Hit Point Press, said, hey, do you want to make a language? And I said, yes. He's like, we'll pay you. And I said, pay me? Like, this is amazing, right? Like, this is my dream come true. So that's sort of the story of how I got into this. But I really, really like, languages and conlangs.
Yeah, I think it shines through in like what you've created. Like, definitely, for sure, you could really see the like passion there.
Yeah.
I love the idea of like little Jay being like, yeah, dragons, magic rings, whatever. Give me those runes.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, and like speaking of like things like the Hobbit and like other like fantasy languages that kind of inspire you, or like.
So I was so into runes, like really into runes. I use them exclusively for about a year to communicate with other people who are not interested in runes, unfortunately. But aside from that, I would say that I think I'm maybe more interested in, aside from runes, which are delightful, more interested in sort of the back end of languages, like how do they work? How does the way that someone see the world, how does the way that a person sees the world inform the way that they use language? And for me, like creating this language for cats was a whole other level of complexity and like an amazing new way to discover the way that a language could come together for cats, because of course they have different biology than people do, so they have different sounds that they can create, they have different, you know, senses and ways that they see the world. So to me that was yeah, really, really cool. But I think that I'm not throwing any shade. Creating languages is hard. I think that some of the languages that I've seen just feel a little bit like it's just a collection of words, which is totally fine. But I think I'm more interested in the complexities of how they
the kind of the behind the scenes, like what's all working in there that you then see at the front, and you dig in, there's something there to dig into. Yeah, that's really cool. Like while you were like thinking about like researching languages like specifically for cats, like Elurans are cat people, what was like the favorite thing you learned while like researching about cats?
Well, I'm about to say something very controversial for biologists, which is that cats can either roar or they can purr, but they can't do both. Now, this is what people have believed for a long time, and scientists have believed. It has recently come out that it is not exactly correct. Yes. However, I still really, really like the dichotomy of two different kinds of cats. So, and by cats I mean like Felidae, like the lions, the group of cats, like big cats, small cats, lions, tigers, that kind of thing. And so the difference is in like how much ossification, like how bony their throat structures are, which determines whether they can purr or they can roar. But for example, like tigers can't purr. And purring is so lovely. And there's so many really cool biological properties of purring. So they found that the resonance of purrs can be really healing for the body. And I think that's really delightful, especially because I have a big fluffy cat named Oscar. And if I'm feeling sick, he'll just come and like lay down on top of me and purr. And I would like to think, I don't know, but I would like to think that he, you know, knows I'm sick and wants to help me. But he's also very large. So it's often a bit too much for me, but no, I think that's really cool. So yeah, probably the purring, roaring thing is really interesting.
And like that's something, because I think you started working in this language even before we started working on the mechanics of like what the Elurans were going to look like in kind of D&D. And we actually took that roaring, purring thing that you'd identified, and that's what the two, like that's how we delineate the two sub-races. So, and they had like the roaring cats have a roaring ability. They can like not like scare people and knock people over, and the purring cats have like this healing ability that they heal with their purrs. So it like all comes out from your research like into the mechanics.
Yeah. I love stuff like that. Like when it comes from something that's informed from biology and you can take that and run with it and, you know, creatively develop it. That's really neat.
Yeah, like for me, that's definitely like the philosophy that I like for like I'm not doing language things, but I'm doing all the like D&D-ification of animals, and it's always like what's the animal like first, and then trying to like get in their head and like what would the society be like if you are a cat?
Yes.
Yeah. Are there any kind of like ways you sort of put yourself into the mindset of a cat when you were creating things?
Oh, so much. Because I was really trying to think, and this is really sort of mind stretching. So it's really one of those things that it's really hard to take yourself out of your humanness and sort of try to put yourself into the way a cat would see something, because of course all of my experiences have been as a human, but learning like they can't see the color red, that was really interesting. They can't taste sweet things, so those kinds of things. Also, their sense of smell is really keen. And I think that as humans, where our sense of smell is one of our most not important senses, the sense of sight for us is much more important. That I think that I tried to develop more vocabulary around the way that things smell, because I think that the way that they see the world, the sort of world around them, would be really smell based. And so, yeah, just different things like that, I thought would be, just sort of based on biology.
That's really cool. Like, and I definitely want us, like, as we're building out more and more kind of lore of the Elurans, it's like, oh, what is an Eluran perfume like how do they use like smell, like perhaps they use it in their signposts, like there's things like that. So yeah, we're definitely trying to like bring in that like sense of empathy for and like sympathy and connection with something that is non-human. I love all that. That's just like I love to see it in the language, and then like coming like we're trying to take bits that you've created and expand on it.
I saw this one commercial, and it always sort of stuck with me in terms of how an animal who relies on their scent might see the world. And it might have been a Coca-Cola commercial, I don't remember. But the cool thing, it was a dog, and this dog was visiting a park, and everything was just emanating with different smells of different colors. And I thought that's a really cool way to sort of translate how a dog might sense the world into the way a human might sense the world, who's very like visual. And I always thought, oh, that's a really neat way to just, there's smells everywhere, right?
So digging a little like deeper into like the creation of Eluran, like was there any particular aspect of it that was like your favorite part to create?
It was just really fun. The whole thing. But, the whole thing was really fun. I think that one thing that really was really cool to me is just how modular this language is. It's individual syllables that you can put together to make sort of a larger compound word that has an exact meaning, but it might add some additional flavor to the word. So like one of the words is egengcha, which is, it just means bee, like an insect. And but if you take the three syllables and you break them down, it means one who pushes thorns. And so it just adds sort of another layer to all of the different words. And I think that one thing that I hope people will really enjoy about this is how much room there is for that kind of thing with this language, so that they can sort of take the smaller elements and build them up to make something with a greater meaning. And I think this language really lends itself well to that.
Yeah, I've actually been playing around with Eluran a little bit for like some content stuff that we've been making, and also when we were formatting the documents, I was like, how do I say table of contents?
Yes, yeah.
And I think I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of like a cycle of like knowledge sense, because I was like, this is like focusing on that scenting theme, like, and here's the like I was using the words like that were available to try and conceptualize like how from this how might I say it's quite complicated term. Yeah, and then also our like some of our writers have had access to Eluran, and one of them was saying how the Eluran document is like his favorite thing he's ever been handed to wants to write kind of TTRPG material and lore, because it's just so useful to be able to, like, oh, I need to name this place. Oh, I can give it a meaning. I can find something deeper within it rather than just a random kind of slap some syllables together. So it's been great.
That's so cool. That's really great to hear.
So obviously Eluran is like a pretty complex and like well-rounded out conlang. How long did it take you to put it together?
Okay, so the honest truth is I have no idea. I would just sort of sit down with the document and just really sort of enter this creative state, and then time passed and I have no idea exactly how much. It was some time, definitely. But it was honestly so enjoyable. I have no idea how long it took, but like I couldn't even estimate.
But enter the Eluran state. Yeah,
it was so delightful. It was just a really fun activity. Yeah.
And like obviously we're using like Eluran in like Humblewood 2, which is a tabletop role-playing game book. Are there any like particular challenges like for creating a language like with tabletop in mind?
Oh yeah, like so one thing that I was thinking as I was making this is how accessible is this going to be for the average user, right? And so even if I know a lot of different things about different like phonemes and sounds and all that kind of stuff, I know that's not necessarily things that the average person know or care about. And so I wanted to make something that was hopefully just easy enough for someone to just put some stuff together if they wanted to, but also add some more complexity to it so that people could dig farther into it if they wanted to. And I think that when you're designing something for like role-playing games, it needs to be, so if you're writing a book, for example, so as I am, if you're writing a book and you want to include like an alphabet or that kind of thing in it, then it's just a very visual, it's very, written, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't need to worry too much about the sounds or anything like that. Whereas if you were to think about like a conlang for like Star Trek or something like that, it needs to be very, very sound based. And like the written aspect of it would kind of more be background or just to, just background. And so I think with a tabletop role-playing game, you kind of have to marry the two, right? You have a book, and this is what you're giving to people. You have written material, and that is almost the entirety of what you're giving to them in terms of instruction or ideas or whatever. But then they also need to use it, not always, but quite often they'll want to speak it or they'll want to use it in some way verbally as well. So I think that the challenge is hopefully trying to make something that sort of marries the two, verbal and written components.
Yeah, like that you've got to serve both. It's definitely something we're thinking about when we're trying to decide how much you'll learn to like put into the text and like where to put it and how to use it. Because we want it to feel like fun and exciting, because it is, and not like a barrier. Of like we did have one patron ask like when is Eluran going to be on Duolingo? That's beyond
Duolingo has conlangs. It does. It's so cool. Yeah, you can go and learn them. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just writing that down. Stretch goal? Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that Duolingo had conlangs. We've got some questions coming in from the chat as well. We've got a question from Brian. saying humble scratch, so our language from the first book, which is really more of a font. It's just a direct translation of English to humble scratch. It takes into account bird anatomy for how the language looks visually and how they count numbers. Did you consider like cat anatomy for like how the forms of the letters would look?
Yeah. So what I was thinking of when I sort of designed the alphabet was, what would have the first form of this language have been, right? So the first, if we look at runes, the first form of them is sort of scratched into rock or wood. So they're very straight. Everything is straight lines because we're using a knife to cut them. But if you think about you know, the first form of this, when maybe they didn't have access to a lot of paper or ink or that kind of stuff, might have also been scratched, but obviously, you know, the cats have claws. And so I was really trying to use a lot of rounded things that sort of might have mimicked the cat's claws in terms of that might have been the sort of first form of it, as, you know, I was thinking in like the Tanglewilds or something, scratched onto trees or, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it has a really nice visual like difference from humble scratch, which is this like very straight, like like a scratching chicken in the ground with its little talon kind of vibe to it. We've also got a very cool a comment from Christina. I would love if more tabletop games had mini common phrases flashcards with TTRPG common phrases. So that's maybe something we need to start translating into Eluran. Kind of, I attack the darkness and sneak attack. That's fun. And then a question from the Milkman. Hello, the Milkman. One thing I love about Morrowind is that you can immediately tell what culture someone is from by looking at their name. Is there any other media that you think does a great job of creating cohesive languages?
Okay, so talking about Morrowind, if you look at Skyrim, for example, they have I forget the name of the language. It's like Dova something or other. It's the dragon language. Dovahkiin is the dragonborn.
Yeah.
It's Dova something or other. And so that language sort of has some similarity. You know, it's also the spell language, so you can shout in that language. And so it has some sort of some similarities in terms of the modularity of it, so you can build up stuff. But something I was thinking about, I was talking with a buddy of mine about the way that dragons might use language. And he pointed out the fact that dragons don't have lips. And like, okay, you know, it depends on what, they're not real creatures, so whatever. But so he was pointing out that maybe they wouldn't use like pa or ma or fa sounds, because if they don't have lips, you know, they can't really make those. So in terms of other languages, I have to, you know, be honest, I haven't explored as much as I could have probably.
Like you're too busy making your own.
But it's more fun, right?
It's more fun, right?
So the answer is I'm not sure, but it's a great question. But I think that there's undoubtedly some out there, and I know some conlangs are really well developed. Klingon, for example, right? It's
Klingon Alpha, very cool. And like just kind of taking like so the Milkman's comment about names, like when you're coming to like think about like how Elurans might name themselves, did you have any kind of thoughts there about how it works in Eluran?
So I in the document, sort of the dictionary that I made for my own sort of just planning section, I got really into making names. So I have a list in there as well of like dozens of names. And I really think that given that it's given that modularity means that its names can be so evocative, right? I think that taking any 2 syllables and putting them together, or even 3 syllables, can really make also not just an evocative name that describes who you are or what you stand for, but also it kind of has a really nice ring to it. It sort of rolls off the tongue if you can put the right ones together. So I think that so I live in Korea, and in Korea it's a similar sort of thing. So there's very modular. So when you name your child, you have 3 names, three syllables, and the first one is your family name, and the second one is it's a little different now that culture is changing, but the second one was originally sort of a generational name. So all the kids in the family would have that second name if they were, from the same age-ish. And then the third name, which is your personal name. And each of those words have a hanja, which is like a Chinese character that's associated with them. So each name brings with it some sort of meaning. So, like golden talent, or, 1,000 luck, or, something like that. And so I think that it's fairly easy to design a name. And one thing that I would, focus on, other than just like the meaning of it, is just like how it sounds on your tongue.
Yeah, I have to selfishly admit we didn't put out your list of names in the playtest because we are using them currently. So yeah, but I think we'll probably have like some information in the Eluran race PDF that we put out with like a bunch of stuff about names. And I just love the Eluran names and like the meanings of them. It's always fun. Little double meaning.
There's a book called Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, and in it, anyways, the Antichrist comes to Earth as a boy and whatever, but except that he gets switched at birth with another kid. I don't know if this is common knowledge. I know it's a TV show now too, but anyways, he eventually gets a dog, and he has to, whatever he names the dog is what the dog will come to embody. So it's like Night Terror, or Stalks by Night, or whatever. And in the end, because this kid doesn't know anything, he's just a normal kid. He calls his dog the Hellhound. He calls him Dog. So this so this dog comes to be like the greatest dog of all time. He just embodies the spirit of dogness. I think that's delightful.
Yeah, the power of names. And like Milkman has also made a comment very similar to that. He's saying Ursula Le Guin was really big on naming characters, something that evokes something about their nature. And then he asks about like any guidance on how GMs or writers can do that. And do you rely on Latin roots or what? Like,
yeah. So for me, the etymology, like where that name comes from, is also really important. So as to like what it would say about a person. So like for us, Latin tends to have more like high class connotations because of the history of English and the history of France coming over, and then France using a lot of Latin words and being from Latin, and William the Conqueror being a rich guy and all this kind of stuff. So there's this incredible history of for English users of where these words come from. And I think that GMs can rely on that in terms of imparting to the players, even without them realizing it, what kind of person this is. And sort of a funny, like, it's not a secret at all, but I collect names, just names that I think are funny. And I have for about the last 5 years. And I was just looking at my name document the other day. I have 73 pages of names. I really like names a lot, but that means it's because I have so many. It means that when I want to name a character, like in a book or when I'm DMing or anything, then I can actually just zoom through the list and see which one feels right according to, is this like an Old English name? Is this a Latin sort of name? Or is this, a different type of name? So yeah, I think names are really important.
Yeah, I one of my favorite things in writing TTRPGs is doing the big roll table of like roll for name. Like I love putting those together.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to making the one for all the Elurans because I have so much to work from. Yeah. And we have another question from Christina. Jay, very important question. Do you have pets, and what are their names?
Oh my God, that's such a great question.
Yeah.
Yes, I have 3 pets. I have 2 cats and a dog. And my dog is sleeping right next to me, and his name is Steve. And I have to call him before I touch him because he has a sleep startle. Steve, Steve, hey. But he's also a little deaf. Steve, hey. Wake up! You gotta come to the live stream.
It's like it's morning. What's happening?
It's the morning. Oh, he's so bedraggled. This is Stevie. Oh, he's so sleepy.
Oh, Steve.
Oh. Let's see what time. It's 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Steve. Thank you for gracing us with your presence.
He just immediately sunk right
back to sleep.
And then I have two cats, and I thought that they would be sort of jumping in because they always, whenever I'm doing anything on the computer, they leap from the chair across there, and they leap, and then they shove everything on this table forward, and I have to catch it every time.
Classic cats.
which is terrifying, to be honest, especially when you have a drink on the table. So I thought they'd be coming, but I think they are firmly asleep elsewhere in the house. Yes. But they're called Oscar and Frederick Bartholomew.
That's the name tells you a lot about Frederick Bartholomew. Yeah.
We say that Oscar is the Allfather because he's very gentle, very wise, and then we say that Fred is on a quest for a single brain cell because he's an orange cat and he has so much love and so much personality, but no brains.
No brains. No classic orange cat. Oh, wonderful. We've got a comment in from Rico. Rico of Hippo Press fame, talking about your big book of names. He says, "Sounds like a new product. Jay's book of names." So, always with the eye to thinking about these things is our Rico. And then we've got an anonymous question. Do you have any good Eluran name examples? Or what would yours be if you were an Eluran?
Oh, that's wild. That's a great question. I have so many examples of names that I've thought up, but in terms of names for me, that's such, that's a question that will take me weeks of thought to answer because names are so important. Names are so important. They tell you who you are, right? So the answer is I have no idea, but that's such a cool question. I really love that. Probably something non-violent. It wouldn't be like night terror, like it stalks my night. I really like plants and stuff. So maybe something to do with that. But that's such a great question.
Yeah. If it were me, I would just translate my name into Eluran because Verity means truth, and I would just. I think, Goth is it seems to be the Eluran for truth. So yeah.
That's really cool. Also, Verity is a really good. What's that race? With the
tieflings.
Tieflings.
Yeah. The virtue names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether or not I have horns remains to be unknown. And then we've got another anonymous question. So for translation purposes between different cultures, is Eluran something that you think could only be expressed by the Elurans, like by the cat people, or can other people speak Eluran too?
Oh, well, yes. So I have hopefully designed it so that it is, the sounds in it are useful by a large number of people and large numbers of races, hopefully. But I think that if you were to consider like different animal races, then you know, because the biology of like their throat muscles, for example, unknown. So I think that that would be something that would be really, really cool to see. But also, like, if you look at animals, like, for example, mice, right? We only a few years ago discovered that mice communicate ultrasonically, so beyond the range of what we can hear. And they we discovered they sing to each other, which is so lovely.
That's adorable.
Yeah,
and little turbine choirs.
Exactly, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But nobody can hear them. But I think that it would be really cool to see sort of individually how different animal races would use Eluran.
Yeah, maybe they have kind of an accent. Like, one of the other races where it's going to be in Humblewood 2 are the Sita, which are the parrot people. And obviously parrots have fantastic facility with sound. And for them, their naming tradition is that they are given like a nest name when they're hatched. And so they have a single syllable nest name. And then over their life, they just add to it, to celebrate things throughout their life, and including like sounds. So it doesn't have like the sound of like the sword swinging could be part of their name because that's something they can pronounce.
That's really cool.
And some of them are like I think in some of the examples we've incorporated Eluran. So like maybe they had a great friend who was an Eluran, and then they received this name from their like Eluran friend. So I think the way we're treating it is very much so like this is a living language people can communicate even if they lack like cat anatomy. Because we want to have those fun little kind of connections between people. Again, like communication, not barrier.
Yeah. It's so neat.
And then Mike has asked a question. Are there any real world languages that you looked at for reference or influenced you?
So for sure, I'm in East Asia. So for sure, the languages that I'm surrounded with, for example, like Mandarin and Korean's a little different, but Korean has a lot of like loan words or words that they've taken from Chinese and brought into Korean. So for sure, sort of the modular form of like, you know, a lot of the Chinese dialects and stuff, how they sort of put together a whole bunch of things to make one concept, is definitely where I got the main idea for Eluran and sort of putting all those things together. And yeah, I mean that's definitely where it came from. So in terms of so my brother actually lives in Beijing. So whereas I'm living in Korea, he's in China. And so he was talking to me about, you know, the Mandarin word for volcano is fire and mountain, but they don't see it as fire mountain. They see it as one concept.
Yeah, that's very cool. And like speaking of like languages that you're familiar with, how many languages do you know? Like,
it's wild. It is wild to me because I'm to be honest, I'm not a vocabulary person. I'm very much less interested in learning large amounts of words than I am in sort of how languages work. So quite often I will go into learning a language and just sort of learn like the basics of how it works together, and then I abandon it. And that is why I have 8 courses currently on my Duolingo, all of which remain unfinished because I'm not so much interested in like using the language, I guess, to talk to people as I am interested in just like seeing how it works. And yeah, so
yeah, you just get the juicy stuff and
yeah, and then off to something else.
And there are a lot of languages out there, so
yeah. Unfortunately, fewer and fewer every day. Yes.
So you also, I think, wrote another language for us, which is pretty different from Eluran, which is Gobbeldygook, which is in Hackna. Like, can you tell us a little bit about like how that's different from what you developed with Eluran?
Yeah, so in Eluran, when I started it, my starting place was going to YouTube and listening to hours of cat sounds and trying to transcribe them as best as I could into English. So I was listening to, you know, house cats, leopards, tigers, lions, whatever, not really tigers so much, but, you know, lots of different sort of vocalizations and trying to see what they sounded like sort of across the board. And so that was really my starting place for Eluran. But for Gobbeldygook, it was really just reading up on like circus culture and like that kind of thing in terms of you know, the vocabulary that they would use to talk, like people who work there would use to talk to each other in ways that, you know, maybe other people couldn't understand. So I spent a long time reading up on that kind of stuff. So whereas for Eluran, the starting point was biologically, where are they? And because there is different species, right? But for Gobbeldygook, it was just, these are just humans, right? Well,
humans-ish, yeah.
You know, humans-ish, yeah. And so that was sort of where I wanted to focus for that, is just sort of drawing as many historical like comparisons as I could in terms of designing the vocabulary for that. So I would say Eluran is definitely more complex just because there's a lot more factors, whereas Gobbeldygook is more trying to, stay as close as possible to the history of the thing.
So it seems like there's like lots of seeds that like a language can grow from, like the biological seed or like the cultural seed.
Yeah.
Is there any like kind of seed or like basis you'd like to work on a new language from?
Oh, okay. So right now for my D&D campaign, I'm working. This isn't really a language, but it's just an alphabet. But I'm working on sort of a seashell alphabet. So things that could be scratched into seashells to pass messages. It's for like a tropical campaign. And so that's kind of what I'm working on right now, and just sort of making it very, not curly cues at all, but just a very flowing, and how you could, so along like a vertical axis, how you could sort of impart meaning in this really sort of beautiful way. But in terms of like active language creation, to be honest, my job is fairly intense. And so I haven't spent a lot of time with it recently, to be honest.
Like a future project when things are a little more chill.
More chill, yeah.
We've got another question here. Have you played Chants of Sennar? Have you heard of Chants of Sennar?
Here's like my secret about D&D is I have never played any D&D from a book.
So Chants of Sennar is a video game.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so
Well, also have not heard or played with that.
yeah, I think you might be interested in it because it is basically, it's based on the story of the Tower of Babel. And so you enter this world and you don't know what's going on and you don't speak the language and you have to like learn the language, and then you think, okay, great, I've understood the language like through context, I've talked to people, and then you get into the next level and the people on the next level speak a completely different language, and now you have to like and like so on and so forth, and like you uncover this mystery like through, and they each have different structures and they get more complex as you go up. So
really cool.
Yeah,
that is
maybe,
really, really cool.
Maybe a game to check out. No, I think it's maybe last year it came out. It's like, yeah, it's kind of new, I think. Yeah, it's very cool. Highly recommend if you if you want a cool language-based video game.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely.
And then Rico has asked a question. If oozes or slimes could talk, how would you imagine they would speak?
Oozes or slimes? A lot of like cheek flapping.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, it like if you thought about it, even sounds that wouldn't be distinguishable by us as two different sounds, for slimes, you know, they could be really sort of fine-tuned, or you could also get like sort of a more like binary based language where you're communicating in like or like, right? So you can have like Morse code. Like there's so many different really cool things you could do. But I think that it would be fairly challenging to have like a player use it or a DM. But it's really cool to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the trick, right? Is finding something that people can, like, non-human language that people can pronounce.
And like and the more alien you go, the less accessible it is. Even if you think it's a really cool idea, sort of the farther and farther and farther you get apart, the harder it is for people to connect with, I think.
Yeah, and the Milkman made a comment a little bit back saying that they heard the linguist who created the visual language for the aliens in the movie Arrival said that if like they didn't have a hierarchical language structure, we wouldn't be able to understand them. And so, have you seen Arrival? Is that
I have not.
Another great language-based science fiction?
I'm not a pop culture person in any sense of the word. I haven't seen any movies. I think I don't know. Okay, but here's the cool thing. All right, so if you look at English, right, we can break down our sentences into three parts, right? Not always, but in general. Who is doing the action, what the action is, and who is receiving or who or what is receiving the action, right? So like the mouse ate the cheese. So you have three parts. The mouse is doing the action, ate, which is the action, and the cheese, which is being acted upon. And most of the languages have this, not necessarily in the same order, but they have the same structure. And in terms of, you know, the subject, so who's doing the action, the verb, and the object, so what is being acted upon. And I've really been thinking of, like, in terms of alien languages, what would it mean for a language to not have that structure? Like, are our brains so tied into it? Because, you know, if people throughout like thousands of different languages communicate using these three concepts, then what would it mean for an alien who evolved under totally different circumstances than we have? What would it mean for them to communicate not using that same structure, not using those same concepts? And would it be impossible for us to understand? And I was actually reading a book just a little while ago about aliens that communicate. Well, this is wild, but anyways, aliens that communicated non-temporally. So in terms of they saw things not as this thing caused something else, but as more as like a whole
everything all at once.
It was fairly esoteric, but really interesting nonetheless. So unfortunately, I haven't heard of this other language, but it does sound interesting.
Yeah, the movie Arrival is based on a short story, which is, aliens language. It's great, and like visual. It's a very cool movie.
Is that old?
No, that's a few years old. Sorry, I'm not sure. We've got a couple of questions from our patrons over on the Patreon. Kind of looping back to Eluran itself. From Paul Blank, what are some common greetings used in Eluran? Sort of hello, goodbye, thank you. Any reason they weren't in the document, or?
When I come home after a long day of work, I open my door and my little dog is right there to greet me. He runs to the door and he's just so excited to see me. And that lasts for like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. The cats are not at all interested in acknowledging my presence in any way. They might happen to come into the same room. Just coincidentally,
coincidence, yeah.
2 minutes after I've moved to a different room, they might then join me, but that's just a coincidence. And so I honestly think that when cats, I don't think that they would necessarily prioritize greetings. And if they did, it might be more of a body language situation. And I think that that could be a really cool idea for a player in terms of like an Eluran character meeting up with non-Eluran characters and finding that really that disconnect between hi, how are you, right? That very friendly business with a character who's like, I know you're here. Like there's no need for me to announce your presence, right? Like we're all aware that you're here. And that could be a really cool role play moment, I think.
Yeah, that's a really cool way of thinking about it. Yeah. And then another question from Paul. Is there anything particular linguistically or culturally about conducting written correspondence in Eluran?
Well, here's where I think that obviously we, in designing this, it's not as detailed as that kind of thing could be, but for sure there's definitely differences in English between how we write and how we speak, and those differences are really stark. If you've ever written like a speech and it's very formal and then you go to say it and then it's very different, I think that there's for sure differences between the spoken and written language, but I think that's up to the players to come up with and the GMs, and use your imagination. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, I wonder if like if you're in Eluran sending a letter, you can kind of flavor the tone of your letter by spritzing some perfume on.
Yes.
I'm going to spritz this on. Like, oh, this is a love letter. I'll spritz this perfume, which is maybe more important than like conveying like the words might be the same, but the emotion is different, kind of thing. Yeah,
brilliant idea.
Yeah. So we've just got a few more minutes here. One kind of question from YouTube. What's your favorite language structure that you've learned? Like,
okay, so I was recently looking at some Inuit languages and how they sort of put things together, and this is still something that I'm researching, but what's really neat is one difference is in English, we really prioritize telling if something is singular or plural in a way that not a lot of other languages do. But what's really cool is in some Inuit languages, they really prioritize telling you singular, double, or plural. And I think it's a tiny detail, but I think that's so interesting. In Korean, one of the devilishly tricky parts of it that really adds a lot of flavor to Korean, if you can get your head around it, is the politeness structure. So here's the thing: it's really hard as an English person to learn how to conjugate your verbs in order to indicate to the person that you're talking about how you feel about them, just by changing the endings of the verbs. But to me, as I've lived here now for 13 years, I've really come to appreciate the subtleties of it and how you can not only indicate to someone like, hey, you're my buddy, you're my friend, but also like, this is not you don't need to stress about this situation, is totally fine. Or telling someone like, hey, I think you're really someone I really want to be respectful towards, and conjugating your verbs that way. And I think that in terms of Korean, it was really challenging at first when I came here, but now I can really appreciate how delightfully those verb conjugations can sort of flavor your language. So there's so many.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So we're almost at 4, so we're gonna sort of wrap up. Is there anything at all you'd like to plug, to share? Any other work you've got out there? Anything where people can find your languages? Anything else?
So I sort of have a website. It is J Jackson Writer, JAY JacksonWriter.com. At the moment, not working, but hopefully tomorrow it will be working. There you can find details of my book called Mother of Worms, and it's a fantasy kind of steampunk monsters, demons, world, lots of world building. The main character is someone from Earth from the 1800s who accidentally sort of gets yoinked into this other world, and she's fairly meek and mild, and she has to start fighting demons, and it's a really cool story of a young woman sort of finding herself and getting brave, and it's amazing, and I love it. She has a sentient demon claw sword. It's incredible. Okay. So Mother of Worms. Yeah, the website isn't up at the moment, but hopefully by tomorrow.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will be checking back tomorrow to jjacksonwriter.com. .com. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been really fun chatting with you and like hearing all about your adventures in languages and the creation of Eluran. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, and now we're just going to wave goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.